Now, cluster bombs have killed or injured more than 350 people in Syria and in Yemen last year. That's according to a coalition of rights groups which says there is evidence that Russian forces are using the weapons in Syria. Now, 119 countries have signed an international convention against such munitions. That's because when they are fired into the air, they scatter smaller bomblets which explode and kill indiscriminately. Now, the Cluster Munition Monitor report says 93% of stockpiles have now been destroyed among the countries which have promised not to use them, but the weapons are still being used elsewhere. And Syria is not a signatory to the convention. Government forces there are accused of carrying out at least 360 cluster bomb attacks in 4 years. And this kind of attack in Syria has increased since Russian warplanes joined the military operation last September. The report also says another non-signatory, Saudi Arabia, and other coalition countries fighting in Yemen have dropped 19 cluster bombs in the past 18 months. Now, we can talk to Kiril Mikhailov in Kiev. He's a researcher with the Conflict Intelligence Team. That's a non-profit organisation that investigates the Russian military. Tell us, what are your allegations then about the Russian military's involvement in the use of cluster munitions, particularly in Syria?
The widespread allegations of the Russian use of cluster munitions started since October 2015, when the Russian operation actually started. In December, leading human rights watchdogs like Human Rights Watch accused the Russian and Syrian governments of dropping cluster bombs. Russian Ministry of Defense denied it and said specifically that they are not at Khmeimim Air Base. And here is where we came in. We thoroughly analyzed footage and photographs taken by Russian media like Russian Kremlin media like Russia Today, Sputnik, and the Russian Ministry of Defense itself, and taken in Syria. And we've seen numerous instances of cluster bombs, Soviet-made and Russian-made cluster bombs attached to Russian jets at the Syrian airbase near Latakia, about to take off. We've seen those cluster bombs at the Russian airbase, and we've seen them in Syrian opposition-controlled areas, predominantly in residential areas where they struck towns like Marat al-Numan.
But there has been, I mean, as you referred to, there has been a fairly robust denial from the Russian military. A military spokesman just in December denied that its air force uses cluster bombs.
Yes, that they did, but interestingly enough, we found one instance of a cluster bomb, namely RBK 500 Shoab 05, which was attached to a Russian Su-25 attack jet. And this photograph was posted to the social network page of the Russian Ministry of Defense itself, like weeks before they denied that they even had those bombs. Well, if they don't have those bombs, why do they post photographs with their jets having this specific type of internationally condemned weapons?
Indeed, but Russia, of course, but Russia hasn't.
The footage and everything that is.
Okay, but Russia isn't a signatory, is it, to the convention that bans the use of these bombs?
Indeed, Russia is not a signatory to that convention, just like, for instance, the US and Saudi Arabia, but Russia is the signatory to the Geneva Convention, which specifically bans indiscriminate attacks on residential areas, which we have seen happening in many areas in Idlib and Aleppo and in ISIS-controlled areas too. On the other hand, there have been a widespread use of incendiary cluster bombs. With these incendiary bombs are specifically banned by the Conventional Weapons Convention, which says that you should not drop air incendiary bombs. And this is a convention which the USSR was one of the founding members. Right. And Russia has affirmed the adherence to that convention in as late as 2008.
Okay, Kiril Mikhailov, live from Kiev. Thank you.